There's something in us that constantly wants to be sure. We want clarity. We want confirmation. We want to know that everything is going to work out before we take the step. And honestly, it sounds wise. It sounds responsible. It even sounds spiritual. Let me just be sure this is God. Let me just feel peace first. Let me just get one more sign. But what if the very thing we call wisdom is actually the thing suffocating our faith? Because real faith doesn't grow in certainty. It grows in trust. And trust only exists where certainty doesn't. If you already know how everything will unfold, you don't need faith. You just need execution. And many believers have unknowingly built a version of faith that requires guarantees. We say we trust God, but what we really want is control with a spiritual label on it. We want God to show us the full picture. We want Him to remove all risk. We want Him to confirm things until doubt disappears completely. But that's not faith. That's certainty. And certainty feels safe, but it quietly replaces dependence on God. Because now, instead of leaning on Him, you're leaning on what you understand. And that's subtle. It doesn't feel like rebellion. It feels like wisdom. But it keeps you from actually walking with Him. Because walking with God often looks like stepping without seeing the full staircase. It looks like moving while questions are still unanswered. It looks like trusting without having everything explained. And that's where most people pull back. Not because they don't believe in God, but because they don't like uncertainty. So they wait. They delay. They analyze. They pray again and again and again, not because they're seeking God, but because they're trying to eliminate risk. And the longer you stay there, the more your faith begins to shrink. Because faith is like a muscle. It grows when you use it. And when every decision requires perfect clarity, you stop using it. You become spiritually cautious, but internally restless. You start feeling stuck, like you're waiting on God, but deep down, something feels delayed. And it's not always God. Sometimes it's your need for certainty holding you back from movement. Because God doesn't usually give full blueprints. He gives direction, a step, a nudge. And then He invites you to trust Him beyond what you can see. And here's the tension. We want God to prove Himself first, but God is inviting us to trust Him first. Not blindly, but relationally. Like a child who doesn't understand everything, but knows who is leading them. Because real faith is not about having all the answers. It's about knowing the one who does and still choosing to follow Him. Even when it doesn't make complete sense. Even when you don't feel fully ready. Even when there are still questions in your mind. Because if you wait until you feel completely certain, you might never move. And over time, your relationship with God becomes more about avoiding mistakes than walking in trust. More about being safe than being led. But faith was never meant to feel like control. It was meant to feel like dependence. Alive, dynamic, real, sometimes uncomfortable, but deeply secure. Because your confidence is no longer in outcomes, it's in Him. So maybe the question isn't, do I have enough confirmation? Maybe the real question is, am I avoiding trust by demanding certainty? Because one will keep you in place, and the other will lead you into a life with God that actually moves.
And sometimes, the step you're afraid to take is the very place your faith has been waiting to grow.